It's August the 18th, and I wanted to address the ongoing situation. I guess the Afghanistan withdrawal is, of course, the key thing, and of course, as we all know by now, so I just addressed the subject in my previous video, it's turned into a complete fiasco. And in fact, the situation, I think, is dawning on people now that it's a lot worse than was originally considered. The main problem is, at the moment, is that the U.S. only holds the Kabul airport. That's it. And the Taliban basically holds the rest of the country, or else the rest of the country is kind of tribal no man's land, if you will. So we have, literally, I'm hearing numbers of 10,000 or more American citizens that are essentially trapped in Taliban-controlled areas. And then there's all these other people who had worked with us that have a status where they could come to the country because they were interpreters or other kind of employees of the U.S. government effort in the area. And of course, Biden at this point just has a complete disaster on his hands, both practically in terms of dealing with the situation and politically the ongoing fallout. This is sort of like the COVID crisis in a way. It's something that just never seems to end. And I'll explain this a little bit later. If you like these videos, remember to subscribe, give me a like to help with that algorithm if you have subscribed, and click the bell for notifications. And of course, comments are appreciated. So again, here's the problem. Basically, we have an ability to evacuate people, but the people's ability to get to the evacuation point is very limited because they have to go through Taliban controlled areas, essentially almost like Taliban gauntlet to get to the airport. And even if you get there, there'll be large crowds of people trying to get in. And obviously these crowds are mixed up between people who are American citizens, people who have a legitimate reason to expect to come here, and people who just like to come here, like all the people crossing our southern border. And given that situation, it's going to be very difficult to get our Americans out. And the one thing about the Americans is a lot of these people, almost all of them, have families back home who are going to continue to create a political pressure on the Biden administration to get them out, yet our actual ability to do it is going to be quite limited. As I understand, they're now relying on the goodwill of the Taliban. Wow, goodwill of the Taliban. That's been historically a very short supply. And the other question I tend to have is when you just look at this ragtag group of people, just what degree of command and control do these Taliban people at the table making speeches for international media have over the guys with the guns in some remote villages all over the country or in various cities or even on the streets of Kabul? I mean, I don't see this as being a well-regulated military, let's say. I mean, obviously each group, I guess, knows who their leader is and who to take orders from. But what kind of chain of command goes from the top down to these people, and to what degree to each local unit commander, what loyalty does it really have to these top people? I mean, we'll find out, I guess. But, I mean, in other words, if they say, let the Americans go free, don't mistreat the women, etc., if that's what they're saying in Arab and their own native languages, Pashtun or whatever they're speaking over there, I guess you'd say, if that's what they're saying there, as opposed to what they're saying to the press in English, you see what I'm saying? That they're probably speaking out of both sides of their mouth, and we have a real problem. Tactically, we have several thousands of troops and essentially can hold the airport, and I doubt they'll want to attack that position. However, we have to recall that, right now we're not prepared to really venture outside the airport, and that's where most of these people in that city we would like to rescue are located. But here's the problem: even if we had a little forethought and got troops in there before the withdrawal was fully announced, and maybe controlled the city itself and controlled access to the city, so that we actually controlled the streets, or at least a lot of them, we'd be in better position. But even then, a lot of these people we're interested in are not in Kabul. They're in wherever. Maybe they're in Kandahar. Maybe where are they? And this has been like, we can debate the whole issue of whether or not we should have pulled out. And on Twitter, I hope that people can understand where I'm coming from. I'll explain it more clearly here. My position going in, if you're going back to 2001, 2002, and this is historically true, I definitely thought we shouldn't do anything like a nation-building program. I thought we should do things like a giant raid. And I thought that early on we went in with too light of a footprint. Basically, we relied on those local tribes to do all the, the general grunt work while we had our special forces and our CIA people leading the way with a lot of air power. But when it came down to when we had to move up to try to block the escape of bin Laden, our local tribe people wouldn't move. Where if we'd had a battalion of the 10th Mountain there, for example, or an 82nd Airborne, I think they would have moved. And I think we might have actually got bin Laden quite earlier and avoided this whole scenario, and then we'd have left, and you wouldn't have all these sad cases of the women that were westernized. They're now going to be, who knows what's going to happen to them with the Taliban, beheaded or mistreated or who knows. Not nice. Things are going to happen. Obviously, in other words, we made promises that had a finite expiration date on it, but the people there didn't really quite understand that. And so now I was hearing today about some women who were, trained in robotics or something and had built a ventilator, very skilled people, but what are they going to do now in this environment? So, of course, we just can only, hold on, hope for the goodwill of the Taliban, but I don't think that's going to last very much. And so the other point I've had is this, is that once you've made a commitment like this, I think it's very disingenuous just to walk away, and maybe even a bad idea, for a lot of reasons. Well, one, there were certain advantages to the position we had. We could have probably held the country with, basically with a lot of, with a very small residual force, and the air power we had available, and the intel we're providing, and the backup we're providing to the Afghan security forces. These security forces have fought for years and took thousands and thousands of casualties. These are not, to overly characterize them as people that just run away is a wrong way of looking at this. But once we announced we were leaving, the corrupt government people at the top obviously started, stealing the pay and for the troops and putting it in their foreign bank accounts, preparing for their escape. And the people below them began to see this was happening. The people below them began to see it was happening. And when the bottom line, the troops in the field began to realize, hey, we're not getting paid, and the Americans say they're pulling out, the game's over. What are we going to do when the Taliban comes? And so naturally, everybody, it turned what might have been a phased withdrawal into an absolute rout. In other words, our actions triggered the implosion. Granted, the real situation, which wasn't strong, but it didn't have to implode like this if we'd have kept the support in place. And if we were going to pull out, and apparently 2 presidents have decided that we were going to in succession, so that's a done deal. So, okay, bad decision, but that's what we're going to do, let's say. It should have been done in a completely different way. For one thing, our military should have been kept in place, controlling the situation on the ground while we evacuated all the non-essential American personnel and told everybody else, the interpreters and all, to go come and apply for their visas now. If you're not actually working for us now, if you're a former employee and you want to get out of here, here's your opportunity. Come and do it now. And then that could have all been processed before the Taliban took over the country, and then we could have moved on systematically withdrawing the military, But instead, we withdrew the actual military capability first, and now we're in a jam because the military there has only one location, one airport, and the Bagram Air Base has been, many people have commented, would have been much better as an operating base, much more secure. This thing is not really secure if the situation turns hot. And if we have to actually retake the city with the troops we have there, which they might be capable of doing it, they're elite troops. They're, Marines, 82nd Airborne, But what kind of casualty level are they going to take doing it? 100 KIA, 200? This is, plus how many wounded? This would be a real fiasco on Biden's part if he does it, so he's probably not going to do it. So the result is the Taliban controls the situation. And the only option I see we have to influence the Taliban basically isn't goodwill, but it's money. You know, how many $1 billion do we have to pay them to get our people out? Ransom. Isn't that the only thing left that Biden has in his tool chest? And I think that, because I mean, it's not to say the U.S. military couldn't reconquer Afghanistan, but we're not deployed to do it. Even the original invasion, which was a light invasion, as I pointed out, that took, about a month to get underway. We had an aircraft carrier that was stripped of its jets, full of helicopters to fly people in from the Indian Ocean, and I'll go through all the details. The point is, we're nowhere prepared to conduct an operation like that. Our air support is hours away, basically, very long leg distanced air support from bases like in the Persian Gulf that have to fly around Iran to get there, or from potentially an aircraft carrier, which could be brought into place. So the point is, we're not in a good tactical situation here at all to do anything. I expect that this is going to be a political lead weight around Biden's neck for a long time, because no matter what we do in the next month, there's going to be a lot of Americans left behind, let alone these other people that have some claim to, to help because they work for us. And if anybody believes that all this amnesty talk that we're getting from the Taliban is going to really hold up, I'm skeptical. For one thing, I don't know that they can really control what happens at the local level that well. I mean, even disciplined armies have incidents when they conquer countries. Even good guy armies do, if you will, let alone what bad guy armies do, like, Russians conquering Germany at the end of World War II or something. So, this is going to be ugly, and I think the trouble is it's only begun to get ugly. We're just beginning to see the outlines of how bad it's likely to be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if we can persuade the Taliban leadership to help us get our people out of their goodwill or a lot of money in the bank accounts, maybe, and think about this, then those bank accounts will probably fund future terrorism. So in other words, there's really no nice way out of this situation now. Well, at any rate, that's the good news I have for you today. If you want to follow my ongoing comments, I'm on Twitter, and also post on Gab and Parler. Probably not as frequently there on the day-to-day stuff, but I try to. And so that'll be kind of it for today. Bad news, but that's what happens when you elect somebody like Joe Biden as president.